Our top news story of the day is that Henry Kissinger is still dead.
UNFTR.
Now for today's Quickie. As the days roll on and we get simultaneously closer to the election and further away from Trump's presidency, the tiny hand orange-faced butt pucker's favorability ratings are increasing. A joint New York Times Siena poll has the former president's favorable ratings 2 points higher than the current president. It's only been 3 years, but the country seems to actually be getting nostalgic for the Donald. This is the kind of sentimental turn that typically takes decades to pull off. Surprising? Yes and no. Barack Obama secured his first term with a popular vote margin of 10 million. Obama fever had swept the nation, and the world for that matter. I mean, he was given a Nobel Peace Prize in his first year for nothing. But because the country was pulling out of the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression, Americans had a big appetite for all that hope and change we had coming to us. By the next election, Mitt Romney managed to shave the margin, and Obama won re-election by 5 million. By 2016, America had enough of Obama's steady Eddie routine and decided to vote for a reality television star with no experience, a litany of bankruptcies, and a slew of public sex scandals. So what's wrong with us? Is it a uniquely American trait to suffer from extreme electoral amnesia? Not really. I mean, it's definitely in our DNA, but it's not exclusive to us. For example, in 2021, the Levada Center released a poll that revealed that more than half of Russians polled think that Stalin was a great leader. Now, it's estimated that Stalin straight up murdered about 1 million Soviet citizens in gulags, where somewhere between another 6 and 9 million perished through forced starvation and incarceration. Nazis have made a resurgence in Eastern Europe, and sadly in corners of our little democratic experiment. There are Chileans who pine for the days of Pinochet. You know who gets this? McDonald's and the makers of Malamars. There's a reason that the McRib only shows up every few years, and synthetic Malamars are marketed as seasonal. If the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist, then the greatest trick that Trump ever pulled was convincing half of this country that he didn't do it, whatever it is, except when he admits to doing it, in which case it's fine. I mean, this is the guy that initiated Operation Warp Speed to help bring the COVID vaccine to market and then convince people not to take it. Or take it. He did. Except that he didn't. Bleach and UV rays, maybe. A lot of people say it's a cure, along with horse medication, but take the vaccine. But don't boost. No booster, but don't take the vaccine. And there's no mandate, but we should mandate it. Even if you take the pandemic out of the equation, Trump gave everyone whiplash because he stands for nothing. He floated ideas from assassinations and nuking hurricanes to raking leaves from the forest floors to stop wildfires. Every single day, a new bonkers headline. It's not that some of us have forgotten. I mean, there are those who never stopped loving Trump, but for the fence-sitters, it's too early for nostalgia to kick in for most people. The Trump bump is something a little different. It's what Obama was contending with in his second election: momentum versus incrementalism. When we talk about historical epochs, there are a few in this nation: Revolutionary America, Pre-Industrial America, Depression era, Post-World War II boom, Civil Rights era, the 50-year neoliberal era. And I think when we look back through history, we'll see the financial crisis as the end of the neoliberal era, and 2009 as the beginning of something different. From a political and economic perspective, we can see the change in how we legislate. Because of the way Congress is structured and the fact that compromise is dead, we've moved to governing by omnibus. Everything big gets done in the afterglow of an election, presuming there's a legislative majority to push through an executive agenda. Obama used his to pass the ACA. Trump used his to push through tax cuts for the wealthy. And Biden used his on the Inflation Reduction Act and infrastructure bills. The Obama terms gave us Trump because of the incremental nature of this period. I mean, after the $787 billion stimulus in the ACA, nothing moved quickly under Obama. The Republicans organized to beat back most of the promised agenda, and the Obama team worked as technocrats to institutionalize the ACA and stabilize the economy. But because a third of that stimulus went to the states and a third went to extending unemployment, the final third went to stabilizing the broader economy, but it didn't do much in the way of moving the middle class forward and lifting people out of poverty. The Trump tax cuts, mixed with a protracted zero interest rate environment, gave an appearance of forward momentum, if only because it caused the markets to rip and overheat a little bit. But the pandemic laid waste to every policy in its path, and it left the Trump administration in a state of desperation. Now, the Cheetos' personal management style aside, a couple of really important things happened. One was Steve Mnuchin's PPP program that flooded small and medium business markets with capital. Then there were the direct stimulus payments right into people's pockets, the moratorium on evictions, and on the big stuff, the Fed was able to revive a suite of financial crisis-era programs to backstop the markets with liquidity. It was ugly, frenetic, at times lopsided, and sloppy. And what's fascinating is that pound for pound, Biden's omnibus accomplishments are far greater than his predecessors of this new era. It's just that the investments are mostly into the physical rather than the human, and therefore harder to feel on a personal level. Now compare that with what happened at the end of Trump's term. Trump's mismanagement of the pandemic plunged the country and household wealth into the abyss. And within months, the government covered it and then some. A combination of socialist-style welfare policies and extraordinary Keynesian interventions gave the country a different kind of whiplash. From the depths of despair, social and fiscal welfare policies saved the nation, and for the first time since the post-World War II boom, everyone was a little better off than before. I mean, those who were still alive and weren't murdered during the pandemic by Trump's policies. Now, I know people on my side of the political spectrum who just can't bring themselves to compliment the Trump administration for anything, and I get it. But I think that's stupid. They should be complimented for rolling out and managing one of the greatest examples of socialist economic policy the world has ever seen. Think about it. Eviction protection, direct child welfare payments, suspension of student debt payments, infusions of capital into small businesses completely written off and forgiven, free vaccines, extended unemployment benefits, universal health care. The country isn't nostalgic for Trump. It's yearning for social democracy. It just doesn't know to call it that. Trump's momentum was socialist in nature. So maybe that's the greatest trick the devil you know ever pulled off.